Hello and welcome to the TechGig podcast, folks. I'm Sukriti and I'm here with a very interesting conversation on how design thinking is complementing DevSecOps. A design thinking mindset injects more user-centric thinking into the DevOps environment and increases the likelihood that IT will deliver what users need. It also helps to ensure that the user's feedback is part of the ongoing development and deployment processes. I'm going to further deep dive into this topic in today's episode with the Director, Business Technology Consulting of Micro Focus, Manish Gupta. Welcome to the show, Manish.
Hey, thanks, Sukriti. Thank you for the introduction and also providing us the opportunity to share our thoughts on this platform. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Welcome to the show, Manish, once again, and thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this conversation and help us and our audience understand the entire importance of design thinking and DevSecOps. So, without any delay, I'm going to ask the questions, and I'm really excited to know the answers from you, Manish. So, to begin with, tell me, why is it crucial for companies to embrace DevOps mindset, culture, and tool chains for staying ahead in the digital era?
Certainly, and I think you used quite a few terms there. Starting with digital era, I think the fundamental building blocks of the business. One of the key component now is software, and that's what we relate to in the digital era. Sometimes software is the business itself, and we see so many examples of new age businesses these days who are completely driving this change. Take examples in the media streaming or cab aggregation services or even food delivery. So what this essentially is turning into is a race where everyone wants to deliver software innovations and improved customer experience faster than their competitors. And of course, because this is the business, they want to gain the mind share and retain their customers. So DevSecOps and embracing the culture of DevSecOps has actually become a way for organizations to differentiate themselves. And they use this technique to speed up their software delivery and deliver a better customer experience. And as far as the culture goes, I think it's very important to look at the origin of the word DevSecOps itself. Essentially, we are saying that there were all these silos of development and operations which are now being broken down, and we're trying to create an integrated approach. But also, I think you referred to tool chains, and that's again a very important concept when we talk about DevSecOps, because these tool chains can orchestrate an automated way to deliver software. But I think it's also very important to see how we govern the delivery process. So it's not just automating, but also providing the governance framework for software delivery. And I think just if I drill down on the cultural aspect, and I talked about the silos that have existed, or we witnessed them quite a few years back as well. The development silos, and then the testing, and then the release and operations people and the security have their own silo. And sometimes they had conflicting agendas. So each one had their own understanding of the objectives, and there was not really any common goals that they would work towards. So in terms of shifting to this DevOps culture, one of, I would say, objectives is also to set aside these conflicts and work together for the betterment. And then I think that also follows into the tool chain aspect. And because of the silos in the past, we had all these fragmented tool chains. The automation levels ended up being lower. And also because of the fragmentation of the tool chain, we could not get metrics all aligned to give us the visibility from an end-to-end perspective of the work flow. So modern DevOps tool chains can not only orchestrate automation across the build and the test and the delivery part of software, but today we are seeing adoption of AI and analytics techniques also to provide visibility and insights across the entire end-to-end process. People are talking about now identifying metrics that will, measure waste in the system or friction. And also, I think there is a move towards aligning this overall delivery execution with the business objectives. So this is where I think DevOps is evolving into this new realm called value stream management. And maybe I'll touch upon a little bit more later in this conversation.
Interesting. So, Manish, we had set up a conversation, in the very beginning that we are here to talk about how design thinking is complementing DevSecOps altogether. Help us
Right.
understand what is the correlation between the two.
Perfect. So design thinking, as we all know, is a structured process that refers to a user-centric technique that you can use to develop solutions to problems. And it uses evidence of how a product or service is used to further refine it. And this makes it an iterative process by definition, right? So we're looking at a feedback mechanism from how the user is using a product and then taking that feedback back into product management and development. So by the nature of this mechanism, because it's an iterative process, agile and DevOps techniques become an ideal delivery mechanism to meet this objective. Of course, with DevOps, you want to speed up these iterations. We talk about failing fast. So the faster the feedback, the faster we'll be able to adapt and make changes to our approach. And this, like I said, means incorporating feedback from the operations, from the end users back into the product management so that they can refine their backlog. But another key element of design thinking that we hear a lot about is empathy. It's one of actually the first steps in the design thinking process. So while building a DevSecOps culture, imagine we have developers and we have site reliability engineers or any other IT staff. Now, in this context, empathy can be directed at the problems these users are facing in delivering software. So, for example, in the DevOps manifesto, as published by the community, it encourages the security professionals to think like developers. And they would also like to integrate their tooling programmatically like developers. So the entire point here is that while you want to remove barriers and enhance collaboration, you're also fostering trust, which aligns with this concept of empathy. So in this example, both the developer and the security professional, they understand each other's concerns, they can empathize, and ultimately, that reduces friction, delivers better software. So I think it goes very well together with the design thinking.
Okay, and what are the challenges? I'm sure every process and every coordination comes with a certain set of problems, I should say. So tell
Yeah.
me, what are the challenges that companies might face with the DevSecOps option, Manish?
Yeah, and we focused a lot on understanding these challenges, especially when the pandemic started. We actually commissioned a study with IDC to survey more than 1,000 IT leaders across Asia Pacific. And in that study, along with this analyst, we were able to identify at least 5 key obstacles that companies are facing in DevSecOps adoption, and they range from of course, the internal cultural resistance, or even of course, the process maturity might not be at that level where they can claim that they are efficiently doing DevOps or DevSecOps. Other technical challenges that we have seen as part of this study, we could learn that a lack of automated CI/CD tooling, and I talked about that earlier on as well, that integrated tool chain is still a challenge they face because it tends to be fragmented. Infrastructure automation, I think that is something people are gaining ground, but it still remains a challenge because a lot of customers still manage hybrid infrastructure. So managing hybrid infrastructure and automating across this hybrid infrastructure remains one of the key challenges. And finally, let me also say that a lack of skill set and budget are typical issues that any organization would face, not just in DevOps adoption, but with respect to any new initiative that one would take up. So let me take a few examples. Security, we talked about it when we talked about design thinking. It's a shared responsibility across development, security, even operations team. They're supposed to be vigilant about security threats. So a lot of organizations still feel challenges in integrating security with the DevOps process. So while they might have started off with some level of CI/CD process maturity, integrating security has still remained a challenge. When we talk about quality, quality is again everybody's responsibility. So we are looking at organizations including more and more automated tests in their CI/CD pipeline. to increase the speed of delivery, to overall improve the customer experience. However, a key challenge that is emerging from this frequent software changes is the brittleness of the automated tests themselves. So just to understand it in simple terms, as my application goes through changes, as I'm rolling out new features through this DevOps process, I'm still expected to test it every time I make the changes. But guess what? Because of the changes, my automated tests themselves need a lot of maintenance. So this has become a pretty big challenge in the last few years. But guess what? AI-based computer vision technology that we developed at Micro Focus, that's significantly revolutionizing this whole automated testing process and helping solve this big challenge. And finally, let me talk about the scalability and reliability issues that companies they struggle with in delivering large-scale applications. And performance engineering is also a challenge in such scenarios because the infrastructure and the tooling required for this massive scale is typically not available. So if the customers or if the organization is already moving to a cloud-based environment, then of course it becomes easier. But we know that a lot of customers still struggle with infrastructure for such massive scalability scenarios. I'll just conclude by talking about a case study of one of our customers who operate in over 50 countries, and they wanted the developers to be more productive. So they moved to a cloud-based security scanning solution from Micro Focus, and they were able to, of course, overall improve the application quality and security. But this also allowed this company to easily increase the volume of the number of applications that they could scan for vulnerabilities and preempt those security issues. So not just improving the application security, but ultimately they were also able to improve the developer productivity. So I think that are some of the key challenges that come to my mind. I'm sure there are more that we can talk about.
Okay, so developers are playing a very important role when it comes to the entire IT strategies these days and the entire digital transformation, I should say, Manish. Help us understand how is DevSecOps empowering developers to defend their IT framework and the business at large?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Today the developers are considered to be kings, and they prefer to work in their own IT framework. Especially, they love their IDE environments. They like their programming languages, and they want to stick to those to that framework. But with DevOps, of course, we're looking at a lot of tooling getting introduced to automate the entire end-to-end process. So with this, the principle of everything as a code has actually turned out to be a huge enabler for automation, but that also means that the developer is even more empowered now. I mean, think of entities like tests or even infrastructure, right? These definitions are turning to be treated as code. So when we talk about infrastructure as code or even automated tests as code, this is further empowering the developers so they can defend their IT framework. Whatever tools that are being adopted in that DevSecOps toolchain, and we keep talking about this seamless integration across the ecosystem to have that, rather than having a fragmented view, having this fragmented toolchain as we try to integrate, it actually becomes almost mandatory for every tool to integrate into the development ecosystem, like an IDE or into the source code management system, or even whatever CI tool is using. Even at Micro Focus, when we are building any solution or even any other vendor today, to deliver a DevSecOps platform or a solution, it has to work seamlessly within the developer's framework. So for example, we recently launched an enterprise value stream management solution, which, as I said, is an extension of the DevOps principles. Now, this platform is completely SaaS-based, but it also integrates with the most commonly used development frameworks, be it their IDEs or be it their CI tools. So while value stream management platform is going to manage that end-to-end delivery process and make it more efficient, it's easy to look at it through the lens of the developer framework as well. Similarly, if I talk about a cloud solution for performance engineering and scalability testing, while it is completely delivered in the cloud, it's easy to plug and play into the DevOps toolchain to the liking of the developers framework. Same way, Fortify on Demand, for example, is as an application security as a service solution that is built on this DevSecOps principle so that it can work with any developer framework. Now, when we talk about shift left and developers being responsible for security, like I said, they would want to do those security scans or those functional tests or even the performance tests sitting within their framework, and they would continue to defend it. I would rather say they're getting more empowered now with the tool chain becoming so seamlessly integrated with the IT framework of the developers.
Thanks for that, Manish. This is the last one here. What are the key trends to look after in 2022, the remaining 6 months with respect to DevSecOps?
Yeah, that's again, interesting one, because we've also commissioned studies and try to understand what are the key trends. And one thing for sure is that the trend is towards even more adoption of DevSecOps. So as organizations understand both the efficiencies as well as the improved security posture that they are able to achieve with DevSecOps practices, we are only going to see an increased adoption across all industries. In fact, from public sector to banking and finance, telecom, we hear almost across the board that this is a phenomena that's going to have to scale across the entire organization. Probably a lot of companies, they started their DevOps practices in some small projects as a pilot, but I think the need of the hour is to scale DevSecOps practices all the way across the enterprise. Value stream management is, like I said, an extension of that framework. We talked about it in the last few minutes. And that is also a trend that many analysts are predicting. It's going to be top of the mind for a lot of organizations to eliminate waste in the delivery process, automate using DevOps techniques, reduce the friction, make the silos invisible, and get everybody to collaborate. Security, again, I think the security threat is growing. So from a DevSecOps adoption, we will see more and more integration of the security practices within that framework. Throughout the pandemic, we've been hearing about how security teams they want to gain a concrete understanding to ensure that applications are secured. CIOs will prioritize integrating security into the DevOps process. Automation, right? So how do we further make automation more resilient? I talked about the AI technology. I think this AI and machine learning and computer vision technologies, they're going to make a big difference in making automation, I would say, more maintenance free. And that essentially will provide the higher ROI for the investment people make in automation. Our tools like unified functional testing already packed with a lot of these AI capabilities so that today we can create a single test script across an Android and an iOS platform. Now that's right there, 100% gain in efficiency, because now you don't have to double the effort for two different platforms, because the AI is powerful enough to work across these different platforms. And I think finally, this concept of everything as a code is a growing trend. We see, more and more infrastructure being treated as code. I talked about tests being treated as code. Overall, it will fit into the development framework very nicely. So that probably another trend to keep an eye out on. That everything as a code will gain more importance.
Thank you, Manish. So a lot of things are, there coming up for the IT workforce entirely, for the businesses, for the developers to look at when it comes to the functionalities, Manish, I'm sure, with the kind of insights that you've shared. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation and filling us in with so many details about design thinking as well as DevSecOps. Thank you for giving us the understanding between the two and how they are trying to, function in different organizations, Manish.
It has been my pleasure, Sukriti. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak on this platform. It's really a privilege. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Audience, this calls for a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you had your set of learnings and you've made notes of what Manish has given us in terms of the insights. This is me signing off. Please stay tuned to TechGig for all the latest tech updates. Thank you so much.